Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Real Tales podcast. Today, I have two very special guests with me. I have Gianina and Katie Romito out of Jacksonville, Florida. They are here to talk to us about how they're running a very successful wholesaling and flipping operation down in Florida. Ladies, how are you today?
How about you?
Awesome. I'm doing amazing. I'm doing amazing. So for the amount of deals that we've done together, it's finally great that we have at least a semi face-to-face conversation. So this is great.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was like, how many have we done with him so far? And we've never really talked to you on the phone, we've texted, emailed, everything. We've never met.
Right. Well, this is incredible, guys. I'm really excited to have you guys on. And I've always been curious. I mean, I just so the audience knows, I've known these two ladies for I don't know a couple of years now. I've done some deals with them, and I've always been curious. They're always one of the smoothest buyers I've ever worked with, the smoothest wholesalers. I always wanted to know what happens behind the scenes. How does this well-oiled machine actually run? And I'm actually just curious myself to ask all these questions today and to really get down to it. So before we get into any of that, I want to ask, how did this all start? What were you guys doing before real estate, and how did you guys end up finding real estate and getting your start?
Yeah, so prior to real estate, I was a speech pathologist, a speech language pathologist, otherwise known as a speech therapist. And Katie was a behavior analyst, and that's actually how we initially met in the field of, helping people. We were both originally going to work with kids with autism, so we had zero real estate background. So that's kind of just a little bit about our backgrounds.
When we had those careers for almost 10 years.
Yeah, so 10-year careers, in that field. And then kind of a little bit of how it started was when we made our move to Jacksonville. So when we moved to Jacksonville, in the process of figuring out where we wanted to be full-time, St. Augustine versus Jacksonville, if we wanted to build, if we wanted to just, buy a home, we were renting in the meantime. And we also had, 7 animals? At the time, yeah, we had 7 animals and a child.
Whoa.
So
Got the kids.
yeah, and a child. But to find somebody, a landlord that will rent to you, when you have a zoo like that, was pretty impossible. But we ended up finding someone that was a private landlord in the 32208 zip code of Jacksonville. So a little bit different living than we were living previously. But at the time, we were like, this landlord is so young. We're like, how is she a landlord? Like, how did she even get into this? So we both asked her, I think I asked her, I was like, how did you get started? And she was just like, start listening to podcasts. She's like, just start listening to Bigger Pockets, start learning like the lingo and see like what route you want to take from there. So that's when we started. I mean, just kind of dabbling in real estate in general. And that was 2018.
Yeah. At that time we still had full-time jobs. We had no kind of even desire, I don't think, at that point to like leave our careers. We thought this was our lifetime thing we were going to do, but we're just doing a little real estate on the side.
So we just started listening to Bigger Pockets like everywhere we went, in the car, like we instead of watching TV at night, we're like, all right, let's listen to podcasts to just start learning the lingo and start learning anything about real estate. So 2018, I was still working full-time as a speech pathologist. She was at home with our oldest, and we got our first rental.
Yep, in 2018.
Yeah, so we bought our first rental in 2018.
Right down the street from where we had lived for 4 months while our house in St. Augustine was being built.
Yeah. So
we knew the area sort of, just from living there.
And we bought it for $25,000 cash. We put like $20,000 into it. Tried to do the whole sweat equity thing. I would work till about 4 o'clock, then drive out there. We'd meet, paint, peel paint.
Yeah.
Do all kind of stuff with
met some interesting people.
Yeah, our baby in the playpen. But so that was our first one. And I mean, after a couple weeks of trying to do it ourselves, we're like, all right, this isn't going to work. I mean, we got to hire somebody. So had never hired before, but ended up finishing that out. And I think we were in that one at full at like 45,000 or so. Ended up renting it out for about 850. Learned quickly we did not want to self-manage rentals.
Yes.
And we did one tenant self-managed.
Yeah.
And then we handed that off to property management pretty quickly. And we actually sold that one off on terms 2 years ago.
65,000.
No, 80. Yeah. For 80,000. Yeah, we did 80. I looked it up today to make sure. For 80,000, we seller financed it.
Yeah.
So we get some passive income off that one. But so we,
Awesome.
all in all, we started with slowly acquiring rentals in 2018. And then end of 2018, we started doing some flips.
Yeah.
That's when we started doing our first few flips. Barely broke even on our first 2 or 3, but we didn't lose any. So that was a huge win. So I went from rentals to flips. And then during that whole flip process is when we started to discover what wholesaling was. We're like, who are these? We didn't even know. We're like, who are these people that we're buying this stuff off of, that they're making the spread? So we started YouTube Universitying it and being like, we got to figure this out. Like, this seems a lot more profitable than what we're doing. So.
Well, and then it was during COVID that we both were just kind of like fed up with medical insurance, all, like everybody was. I mean, I don't know how doctors and nurses stayed in it during the time when they did. But we were just kind of fed up with it, and we had learned just enough, not really enough, but just enough to be crazy enough to be like, okay, well, I didn't go back from maternity leave. She decided to give her 2 weeks randomly. It was September 2020. And we were just like, okay, we're going full in. We have no plan B. We've got 2 kids at home and got to figure it out. And so, between joining some amazing mentorships and masterminds and, just learning from people, like she said, like we were just YouTube things. We would sit there and watch, tutorials, videos, stuff at night instead of turning the TV on. And we just kind of jumped in knowing there was no plan B and made it work.
Awesome. That's incredible. So in September 2020, while the whole lockdown, COVID was going on, you guys decided just to say, let's just quit our job. Let's go full-fledged into this real estate thing. And at this point, how many deals you guys have under your belt?
Wholesale deals, zero.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was on the verge of being fired, I'm pretty sure, but I had messaged Katie and I was like, it's it. I'm done. I gave my 2 weeks. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, that's it. We got to figure it out. So we went from there. I started driving on my lunch breaks, and I was like, I knew what driving for dollars was kind of at that point, but I was like putting written letters in Ziploc bags with a rock in it on my lunch break, and I was just throwing them like in people's yards. I'm like, I got to get a deal this way. I think
anybody's window.
I have never heard of that before, but now that I think about it, that's a very efficient way to get it done.
Yeah, I was
just grab
terrified.
On a car to start throwing offers at people.
That's what I was doing. I was terrified to knock on anybody's doors. So I was like, all right, I printed everything off at work, and I'm like, this is what I'm doing on my lunch break.
And so at that point, I mean, we had some rentals, we had some Airbnbs, but you hold rentals. It's not, people think like, oh, you got 5 rentals, you're rich, like you're raking in the cash flow each month. Like, no. So it wasn't what we had at that point, our assets, it was not enough to live off of. It was not, any type of safety net. So we knew that we had to do some type of active income that, in wholesale kind of just was the one thing that we were like, okay, we're just diving in.
Yeah.
And so when you guys first got started, I know you guys were buying off wholesalers before you even knew what wholesalers were. So when you bought your first rental, was that acquired through a wholesaler? How did you acquire? Like, where did the first rental property you bought? Where did it come from?
So that one was actually off the MLS. Remember that?
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it was off the MLS. That's when everything up. I mean, in 08, 06, 09 was going for 20 grand.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was through an agent. Actually,
but our first flip was from a wholesale.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Correct.
He was, and I feel like I'm happy that he was the first wholesaler we bought something from, because he did it the right way. He was professional. He helped us through it. We probably were like idiots to him because he knew what he was doing, and we didn't at the time. But I mean, he was great working with. And so I like that we got that side of the wholesale, because a lot of times wholesale gets bad rep, and it shouldn't. Their people are very professional doing it.
Yeah, I was just in Arizona, and they were talking about all the states that are now putting a whole bunch of regulation regarding wholesaling. I know South Carolina, I'm sure you guys heard about that, where they've essentially just banned wholesaling as a whole. And there were some conversations about what that's going to look like within the next couple of years with the rest of the United States. But I mean, to your point, I agree. I think there's a lot of wholesalers that give it a bad rap, but there's the good ones like us too, and people you bought your first flip off of, which really show you the real side of the industry, right? Which is just helping people.
What it all boils down to.
Exactly. So you've bought your first couple flips off a wholesaler. Then you discover what wholesaling was, and then like how did you guys quit your jobs? You guys had to get some active income in because your rental portfolio was still growing. How did you guys start the actual business side of trying to get wholesaling in? How are you guys doing your marketing when you first got started and going forward from there?
And that was 2020. Yeah. So we joined Sub 2 in 2020 and we just started like making connections and, just being around people that were doing deals or that at least knew somewhat something in real estate. We spent $0 in marketing for our first 2 years. So I know we jumped in at a good time, obviously, and that's when the market was super, super hot. But our first 2 years were just JV deals, connections, driving for dollars, and just spending a couple cents, skip tracing it, like physically driving for dollars. And then we do the virtually driving through dollars on Deal Machine or whatever. But yeah, no marketing up until about a year and a half ago. So it was $0, no overhead. And then obviously it just worked out pretty well that, I was the visionary and Katie was the integrator. And I think that's one of the main contributions to why we were able to scale at the pace that we did, rather than people that are like, I got to find my partner, because we already happen to fall into those roles that fit so well, which does not happen most of the time with most people.
Yeah. And how did you guys come to find out who was right for which role?
Pace Morby.
Yeah.
Literally sat us down and he was like,
yeah, it's kind of funny, guys. Because at the mastermind, because we went to the mastermind, and that's when Sub 2 had 200 people in it or something super small. But
the mastermind was probably 30 people.
Yeah.
If that.
Yeah. It's just wild. But we did the hot seat and he kind of sat us down and was like, this is your role. This is your role, because at that point we knew what each one of us strengths were, but we were still stepping on each other's toes a little bit. So he's like, get out of each other's ways, stay in your lane, and you're obviously going to scale a lot quicker staying in your lane. So that's when, we read Rocket Fuel and figured out like, okay, this is my avatar. This is yours. So let's make it happen. And
I love that. So
I'm completely unorganized. Obviously, the visionary is always unorganized and ADHD. And if I didn't have somebody on the back end, and that's why I always tell people that are trying to get started, it's like, don't try to do what you're not good at. Like I'm awful. If you try to put a contract in front of me, like shit's going to blow up. So luckily I have my organized partner here.
That's awesome. So you guys went to a mastermind, Pace Morby's mastermind, which I've had a lot of people on this show that have been in Sub 2, but some people, this goes out to a lot of people that may not know what Sub 2 is or what any of those mentorships are. Would you mind explaining what Sub 2 is and what you learn within that?
Yeah, so Sub 2, I think they've broadened it to a lot more things, but, when we started, it was really about creative finance, which, we are very thankful, especially in the market now that, people who don't know how to use creative finance, that we have that tool in our tool belt. But so basically Pace made this to create a community, I think was his biggest goal there, was create a community. People do deals together, they help each other, they teach each other. And so I think at this point, it's kind of a whole umbrella of real estate investment now. The little fix of everything, is what they're talking about and doing there. But it was, when we first joined it was a kind of tight knit little family, and it was just what we needed. And honestly, we say all the time, like if we had not joined Sub 2, we absolutely would not be where we are today. There's no way we would have fallen off. We would have, you have to have guidance, especially when you start, even now still, even, billionaires, they have guidance.
It's huge.
So that was definitely our saving and our, first stepping stone. And we would not have been able to do it if we hadn't joined.
So I actually didn't join my first mentorship until a year and a half in. So I went in just like YouTube University in the middle of COVID, and just like no mentorship at all. And I think that was probably my biggest mistake getting into the business, was I did not have a mentor. Not necessarily a mentor, more so a coach, right? Because a coach really helps you keep accountable. They give you actionable steps in a short time frame to really help you see performance, in a shorter period of time, as opposed to like a mentor, which is more of like a life, like mindset type of teacher.
Exactly.
So that's what I say to a lot of people, right? Just like find that coach, find that mentor. And I would, and a lot of these mentors nowadays, they are pricey, right? The good ones are pricey, but I
Mm-hmm.
say it's 100% worth the investment, because
Yeah.
what you'll get back out of it, not only in community, but just actually actionable items and performance you'll see within yourself. You're not going to be able to do it by yourself.
No, not at all. And I mean, at this point, we've probably spent like 250 grand just on coaching, mentorships, things like that.
Right.
But like we've seen that return just 4x. So it's
Exactly.
just always having somebody that holds you accountable, because there's periods of time where we don't have, where we may not have a coach at that moment. I mean, they're always going to be your mentor. You can always lean back on them. But during those times, I feel like it's always you just slide down because there's not somebody holding you accountable all the time. And
Right.
so, yeah, invest in yourself, and definitely worth the money.
Absolutely. So your first 2 years was no marketing. You guys just relied on relationships, and them, and that way bringing you deals. What were these relationships mostly? Were they mostly wholesalers? Were they realtors? Were they people within sub two? What would you say the majority of them was, and how did you find them and start and cultivate the relationship?
So it was mostly at that point, that was kind of before we were working with realtors.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of wholesalers, and then people obviously in sub two, and a couple, people that were just like random one off. Like, I know somebody's selling this house, or, my neighbor's selling, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. So it definitely wasn't consistent lead flow, which is hard, just relying on the JV side of things, which, I mean, you can build a business out of that. We know, like, Jamil, those type of people that build it off of that. But
Right.
it was just building relationships. And I spent probably the first 6 months after I quit my job building a true cash buyers list. So it was like, no investor lift, none of these dispo companies. It was fully connecting, finding cash buyers through whether it be Facebook groups, or pulling records and finding those true cash buyers and building my list. I mean, literally on like a Word document, building that and having that. And these were actual buyers. So people would bring me their deals because they knew in Jacksonville that I had a buyer without having to blast it out to 5 million
Right.
on investor lift. So just truly wholesaler connections. And then the agent connections started to come in maybe a year or so later, but we didn't start doing, any agent, direct to agent or anything like that till a year or so in.
Got you. And how and were you to get these wholesale deals? Were you guys doing outreach to wholesales? Like whenever you guys see a deal on Facebook, you just reach out, say like, "Hey, can I get more info? You mind if I help you find a buyer?" Was that how you guys were doing it, or was there a way that you guys were bringing in these leads inbound?
Yeah, we did start out. I completely forgot because it's been so long that we did.
Mostly outbound. It was mostly looking.
Yeah, we were doing cold calling at that time. We had a VA. When we first started, we were doing like 9 hours a day on the dialer, us. So I'd do like 4 hours. I'd get off the dialer and then she'd get on. And
don't recommend.
I mean, it's a way to start. It's uncomfortable at first talking to
Right.
sellers. So I always tell people, just get on the phone. It's like cold calling sucks. But like, if you don't know how to talk to a seller, then, you're never going to get a deal done. So we would just switch back and forth. And that's kind of where we also learned, like, all right, this is definitely more of my role.
Yeah.
And not so much hers. But so it was a little bit of a mix of, the outbound and then just reaching out to other wholesalers that I would see have a deal in Jacksonville and ask if, they needed help.
You also did a lot of Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah.
That was like before people were on Facebook Marketplace scrounging for deals or finding for sale by owner. Like you did a lot.
Yeah, that's true. I was like running our business off that at first.
So were you guys using Facebook Marketplace for dispo or for acquisitions?
For acquisitions.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so any for sale by owner we had seen on there, or I mean, maybe a little bit of agents on there, just seeing if they need, if it was distressed, help moving it. But yeah, a ton. I would scrounge Craigslist. I would scrounge Facebook Marketplace before it blew up.
Before like we're bots do it now.
I was doing what all the bots do.
Yeah, that's what I started off as well. I started late 2019, early 2020. And like Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist was like what everybody was talking about doing. So I would literally, that's how I got my first 2 contracts, was actually through Facebook Marketplace. It was actually off Craigslist, where I saw just people just posting stuff. I'd give them a call and bam, we'd get it under contract. And that's what I use the same thing for Dispo. So back then, I don't know if it still works today because I haven't used it in a while, but back then that was a gold mine.
It was. It truly was a
Yeah,
free way. Leads.
Yeah, and it was free. Exactly. So what does your operation look like today? Is it still just you two, or have you guys built out the business today?
So we've built. I mean, we don't have a massive team, but our vision is kind of obviously we have to be on the same page with our vision and our goals and have those aligned. We don't want a huge, massive operation. That's just kind of what we have discovered over the few years. We have built a small team. We have like an executive assistant now, and I have a full-time guy that does agent outreach for me. And then we have a little bit of help on the acquisition side as well for somebody that's just commission based. So we had a dispo person at one point, but then I do a lot of reverse wholesaling. So the dispo side, it's
hard for dispo to be separated.
Yeah.
Just because if reverse wholesaling is so combined, it's literally, you're almost doing the dispo first.
Yeah.
Right.
So we haven't built a lot. We've had VAs off and on, some just to help on the acquisition side and then some to help with just every day-to-day tasks. But for the most part, I mean, we're a pretty small team. Yeah.
Yeah. Running pretty lean. I love it.
We are.
But it's also nice. I mean, even just this week, she was told by a seller, like, I love that I'm talking to you and not a robot or not a VA or not somebody, which I understand. Like, people run business differently, but it's like sometimes we run ourselves ragged and we're like, why are we doing it just us? Why? And then you hear that and it's like, oh, like some people still like that and enjoy that. And we may get a contract over them because of that.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. 100%.
So, I mean, I enjoy closing. You probably do too. So I don't know that I'll ever fully step away from that. Obviously, having help as a closer and a follow-up specialist and things like that will take some off my plate. But right now, this is our team. So
I think even like long run, I would say no more than 10 people would ever be like something that we want to deal with.
Yeah.
With this business, at least.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, because everybody has different goals. Do you want to build out a multi-million-dollar wholesale operation, or do you just want to have it to the point where, it's built out enough where it's streamlined and then we can go on to our next business venture?
I love it. And so, and just out of curiosity, the person that you have hired for your agent outreach, how did you find them? Is that someone that you hired overseas as a VA, or are they somebody that's in the States?
No, it's somebody in the States locally, and actually found through a Facebook page. Initially wanted to learn more about the business and things like that, and ended up coming on with us. And he's been with us for two years now, I believe. Yeah, about 2 years now. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just another connection.
And so is agent outreach your sole marketing channel, or are there other marketing channels you guys are leveraging as well? Because I know you said you're doing a lot of closing. You mentioned you talk with the seller. How are you guys finding your seller leads?
Yeah, so we do agent outreach. Direct mail is big for us as well, and then we have some Facebook ads going as well. But other than that, those are our main marketing streams.
We there's some website.
The lead generation through there.
There's some website right now too. But
direct mail we dove really hard into direct mail in the last year.
But we still do JVs too, and that's the thing that that was what we started on, and we've now obviously we've realized that you can't rely on that just because it's not consistent, and but I think that's a huge thing in our business that people still a lot of times bring us deals, and like they just know us in this market that we are somebody who will JV.
Yep. Or they just want to learn, and they're able to see me on the acquisition side and the dispo side, and then Katie's able to teach when people bring a JV deal, the whole TC side of things. So
awesome. I have a good question about that regarding the JV. So I personally get a bunch of messages whenever I put out a deal. Hey, can I JV? Can I JV? I'm sure you guys get the same thing. Like we talked about earlier in the show, not all wholesalers are built the same. What do you guys see? How do you guys see people doing JVs wrong?
So I think not setting expectations at the beginning.
Yeah.
It's always, we have somebody come and we're like, okay, well, what do you have to give? What do we have to give? How are we going to combine this together? And then what is it going to look like moving forward? I think the term like JV gets thrown around very loosely, and they're like, oh, here's an address. Okay, let me know when I can pick up a check. So I think you just have to know who's doing what, obviously, and that's, you know, written in document, but then that's the other thing. Some people don't document things, so they don't make JV contracts, all of that. So I just think starting from the beginning, upfront, communicating, is how we've been able to have a lot of successful JVs.
Yeah, because like you said, when people are reaching out to you and they're saying, can I JV it? Are they just blasting it on Investor Lift? Do they already have a buyer in mind? Like, those are the questions I usually ask. Because if somebody knows what their buyer's looking for and they're like, hey, I have a buyer for this. If you truly have a buyer, sure, why not? Let's all make money together. But for me, it's like, if you're just trying to shop it out and you don't really have an idea of who your buyer is, then
it's that's when your deal will go out there, and not only people are going to see you marketing it, but also you and another person and potentially many other people marketing it. Now they have the same deal 3 times in their face, and that just steers buyers the wrong way.
Exactly. And even if, for me, I've noticed, even if somebody likes that deal, if they don't know who really has it, or, you know, they're like, okay, I'm not even going to bother with it. So
yeah,
I'm all for JVs, all for collaboration, but doing it the appropriate way and making sure that all ducks are lined and everything's in place.
Absolutely. And then you spent 6 months building your buyers list. So where do you think you found your best buyers at? Were they through the Facebook groups and like these public forums, or were they more so people that you found public record, or was there something else that you did where you found
I think
your
it was a little
best
mix
buyers?
of both. Definitely a mix of both. The Facebook groups at that time, I mean, I would sit on those for hours and just pull like emails and then reach out to those people, see if they're actually true buyers, you know, and vet them fully to make sure it wasn't just, because now I feel like so many people drop their emails in there. I don't know whether it's a VA or a dispo company, but at that point it was a lot of local groups or surrounding areas and just pulling from, I would, you know, use a search bar, see what zip code they were buying in, find their phone number, email, reach out to them. So between that and then, pulling, you know, PropStream cash buyers on there. PropStream is one of the first CRMs that we started actually using. So, yeah.
Awesome. And so what were some of the top things? I know we touched on a couple of things. What were some of the top things that helped you with scaling from where you guys started in September 2020 to where you guys are today?
I think just getting in the right rooms and getting around the right people that have been, you know, that were where we already wanted to be. And like, although I am the visionary, I'm introverted. So getting in those rooms is always difficult for me. You know, it's like, it takes a lot of pumping myself up to get into these. And when we join masterminds, I'm like, oh my gosh, but it's just crazy. The relationships that you build and the knowledge that comes from being in these rooms. So I think just honestly, connections and relationships is 90% of the reason that our business has scaled the way it was. And focus. I mean, we have dedicated so much time to this business and lost a lot of friends on the way. You know, it's like old friendships that obviously aren't on the same level that we are now, that have dissipated, or people that don't understand that, you know, Thursday nights aren't for going out and watching hockey anymore or whatever. It's,
they can play hockey on Thursday.
I don't know, just an example, but it's like, it's business for us. So, I mean, the beginning was, I was up at 4 a.m. and I was probably going to bed at 2 a.m. So there wasn't a lot of sleep in the beginning, and it was hustle, grind. But like people say, like at some point the hustler must die. And like, you just realize after all that momentum that, oh wow, I don't need to wake up like this anymore. You know, if I don't want to. Some people are just 5 a.m. wake uppers, but so relationships, connections, being in the right rooms, surrounding yourself with the right people that are on the level that you want to be on.
Love that. And in being all these rooms, I'm sure you see some similarities with people that are certain levels of success, right? People that are running successful companies. You know, I'm sure there's a common denominator between all of those. At least that's what I've experienced in my journey with networking and going to networking events. I just came back from one where I had the privilege of meeting some pretty cool people that I've been wanting to meet, and the common denominator that I always saw is, number one, they're amazing communicators, really good communicators, and then also just saw a true passion for giving and like wanting to give more, and having like a real conversation with themselves about what their potential is for service.
Yep, absolutely.
What
We did. We just came back from mastermind as well, and that's
the entire 2 days was everybody's message was a little bit different, but it all came down to like, how can you do better for other people?
Yep.
Right.
So I definitely
It's just having a servant's heart, right? It's like that book, The Go-Giver, right? It's just having like that servant's heart and just actually like understanding that you don't get paid unless you help somebody else get paid, right?
Yeah.
Or at least help somebody with their troubles, right? Whatever, wherever they fit in the puzzle.
Exactly. And we both came from helping careers and essentially teaching careers in her thing. So it's like just using that in a different way.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and
it was all about, instead of just being successful in like money terms, being significant. Like, how can you be significant in your business and somebody else's life? And kind of taking away the dollar signs equal success to like how you can be significant and successful.
Exactly.
And especially when you have the business model of getting it repeat business, right? Because you get deals, and I get deals from wholesalers and realtors all the time, right? That's not something that you just want to have a one-off deal with, right? That's something that you want to nurture to where there's multiple deals for the next however many years that come from that one relationship. So it's that type of relationship doesn't come from just being like money hungry and just grabbing every dollar you can out of the transaction. It's really about just having and showing, right, that you do have that servant's heart, that listen, I'm not happy unless you're happy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's been deals before that we made $0 on because it's not about that. Yeah. It's about, in certain things, helping that seller. And if that means that we make $0 on it, guess what it does? Because it doesn't all boil. Yeah. Everybody has to make money, but it never boils down to just that. So we're here to help and then bring that and teach that to new people in the industry that are trying to learn the same thing and help and just pass it on. So
I love that. What were some of the challenges you had when scaling?
Let me think.
I think the biggest one was before, even after we sat down with Pace and he was like, listen, this is your role. This is your role. I think just still trying to, which we still to this day, like, still have a little bit of trouble, which probably we always have because we're married also, but trying to navigate like, this is your job, and kind of blending that, being married, being best friends, being business partners, all of that together, because it can get a little crazy. But I think the biggest challenge was saying like, this is how we're going to conquer and divide and conquer, and this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, because obviously things come up and you forget about the plan sometimes. But I do think, obviously he changed our life with that conversation about splitting the tasks and, splitting the business the way that we do. But I think that's been one of the biggest challenges probably.
Yeah. I think that was a challenge that we've gotten a lot better at.
Of course.
And I think
at the beginning,
what everybody else does too in this is comparing, because I would sit there and just, with social media now, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people. And I'm like, how are they there in this amount of time? How are they there in this amount of time? Why aren't we doing this? And it can really be crippling. Like it's to the point where you get yourself into this hole and you can't get out of it, because your mind is just telling you, well, I should be doing this better. And that was one thing I think that was a personal challenge, rather than like, you were pretty good at not doing that, but I'll just get on there and be like, well, we should be doing more. We should be doing more. Everybody has different goals. Everybody has a different vision, and all of us are on different, paths and journeys. So comparing is just something that will totally cripple you when you first start, or even in the business now.
I love that. So it was a lot of just, you would say, just mindset things that you had to learn through. So how did you conquer those things?
Was hard putting my phone down sometimes. Realizing how important,
yelling at her sometimes.
Realizing how important mindset was, because I've always been the anti-therapy. Oh, I don't need that. I'm good. And I would see when we first started, I'm like, why are all these mindset Zooms? Why is there all this stuff? Until you realize like, oh my God, this is why. Entrepreneurship is not the same as clocking in, clocking out. The typical everyday consistent routine, there's just so, I mean, it's a mind fuck, to be honest, at first, because it's a struggle. It's hard. Not everybody's cut out for it. So I think getting your mind right is so important, and just having consistency and routine, whether it be, you know, working out to get your mind right, meditation to get your mind right. Like, I'm not a meditator, but I go to the gym so that I can think clearly. So mindset is just huge, huge, huge.
Yeah. And you don't know how much you need until you actually sit down and look at where I'll talk about, you know, my journey with mindset a little bit, because this recently just happened. I had in my business, I had February and March were amazing months for me as far as revenue coming into the business. And then April was just silence. There was no deals that closed. And I haven't had a month like that in a long time.
Yeah.
And so I was just thinking, like, wow, what is going on? What is going on? And then I was listening to a podcast on the way back from the gym by Alex Hormozy. And it was essentially what he was talking about was the environment that you create yourself for success. So everybody has willpower, right? But willpower is finite, right? You don't want to use it on everything, right? You don't want to. You would rather use willpower to have to think about a very intricate business move than to think about waking up in the morning or getting out of bed. Right. So it's creating the environment for success and creating the conditions, you know, that you set for yourself to have those breakthroughs. And I've had some of those times in my life before where, you know, I was zero, and then I just got this coaching from a mentor of mine, and then bam, I just started having, you know, really good traction, really good momentum. And I was thinking back to those times, like, what did I do to myself? What was I told to do that I put in place in my life that made sure that I was almost guaranteed success? And I started thinking about it. Okay, no social media on my phone, right? Okay, I have to have very concrete and very clear weekly goals that I need to hit, right? Because I wasn't doing that. I was thinking so big picture that I didn't know how to translate that into the weekly things I need to get done for me to hit my long-term goals, right? And then the last thing I thought about was what I was listening to. And since then, I've been listening to Earl Nightingale, the Strangest Secret.
Okay.
I love that recording, and I listen to it every day in the morning. And just thinking about just listening to that, and when he says you become what you think about, and, you know, all the lessons that he talks about in that short audio recording, which I recommend everybody listen to. Roundabout way of saying that you are what you listen to. You are mindset is just so important, because not only will it obviously get your head clearer, but it will also give yourself the kick in the butt sometimes that, hey, listen, you know, good job for thinking long term, good job for thinking about these big grand goals, but what are we going to do today? What are we going to do this week that's actually going to get you there? Yeah, love that.
Yeah, it's huge. And it's like I used to do huge checklists every morning. And then I realized like I just kept failing myself every day because I would never finish that. So I started doing like shorter 3 things to accomplish today instead of waking up in the morning. Because I used to write, on my whiteboard or on a piece of paper, because I'm like a whiteboard and paper girl. I would put like 15 things that would have to be done today. And by the end of the day, guess what? I felt like shit because I never completed that. So I started to do shorter things. Okay, if I accomplish these 3 today, if I accomplish these 2 today, it was a good day and it's closer to reaching me towards my end goal. So
exactly.
Checklists are good, but you have to set yourself up for some kind of success rather than something that's going to bring you down.
Right. So if you have a yearly goal, break it down to a month. Figure out what's important for this month that needs to get done.
Right.
That way, in a year, you'll be happy. You'll know you'll hit your goals.
Yeah.
And speaking of goals, I wanted to ask, what were some of the goals that you've had this year for 2024?
You go first.
So I think offloading some of the things that we do not have to do in our business. Obviously, like Gianina said, she loves closing. She loves that. She's probably not going to be one of the first things. But just taking ourselves out of the business a little bit, so that we can have more time with our kids to do things we love. We do like what we do and we like what this has created for our life. But like she said before, we kind of want to go on to other things as well, other business ventures. So just kind of trying to figure out, which we already have figured out what needs to be replaced with someone else. But just by the end of the year, going ahead and getting to that point.
Yeah. And I think mine is what we kind of hit a little bit is giving back more, teaching what we have learned to other people that are trying to get out of their 9 to 5, that are trying to, let loose of something that's not serving them or whatever. So I think giving back more, because up until, maybe a year ago or so, we were so much in the business that I'm like, I can't teach other people this. People reach out to me and they want to learn, but I can't teach it because I'm too much in the business. So by filling those roles, then I'm able to, coach a little bit more and mentor a little bit more to people who are trying to maybe get their first deal done or the first 2 or 3 deals. So I think giving back more and being able to, step outside of this role more to serve a little bit more.
I love that. And as far as your 3-year goals, you have something for 3 years or in 5 years that you guys have on your vision that you want to achieve?
What's yours?
You go.
I don't know. I will say this is something we're good at our short-term goals. We're good at our 1-year goals. We're not great at the 5-year plan, which is something that I highly recommend people do because we've sat down before and been like, we need a 5-year plan. I don't know. That's a good question. So it's probably something that we should figure out.
Yes. For me, at least, I think I can speak for you too. Family is one of the most important things in our life. I would love to be able to spend, not that we don't spend time with our kids, we have gotten to, for when we first started the business, it was to the point where we were working 7 days a week. Yes, we were with our kids, but we weren't fully with our kids. And now we've gotten really good at that. Weekends are for our kids, and people have gotten mad at us and they've been like, we're not working. And we're like, no, sorry. My kids more important than you. It's just how it is. So, and I think, come 5 years, they're a little bit older. We both love to travel. I would like to be able to kind of just set things on auto, take 2 weeks and travel with them, then come back. And, because I think both of us, we don't want to retire and do nothing. But just put things on a little more auto, and be able to do things we want with our family and, our kids, and have that a little bit more freedom in our life, which we are thankful for the freedom we have now that, came with entrepreneurship. But as it's craziness that comes with freedom.
Yeah. Never stops.
We never put traveling on the side. So we travel a lot still. And that's probably people that see my social media, they're like, you're always somewhere. How are you doing that? Because we're still working while we're there, so it's nice to close deals in the Caribbean, but it would be even nicer to, sit in the Caribbean and know that our team is closing the deals. So I think just delegation is in the short-term goals and in the long-term goals as well. And we want to start acquiring some more businesses, doing it creatively. So having the wholesale thing and the real estate kind of just streamlined, and then focus on more business acquisitions creatively. And
like Gianina was saying about, trying to give back and, whether it might be coaching or whatever else, I feel like both of us have similar but separate passions. And because the last couple of years of building a business, how much time it takes. And it's, I wish we could give more of our time to things like that. So definitely, being able to set things on autopilot and say, hey, we're going to go on a mission trip next week, and nobody's going to call us about a deal.
Yeah. I love that. And I see that you guys have started, at least Gianina, your personal brand. I see you on Instagram and Facebook, absolutely killing it. What made you want to start your own personal brand?
So it's kind of funny. We went to the Scale and Escape, Kent Clothier's Scale and Escape event that he held. What year was that?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah, it would be 2 years ago now. And I remember one of the speakers getting up there and being like, just document your journey. Because at that point, I wasn't posting anything at all. And it was like, it doesn't matter how stupid you look, just post a video. If somebody judges you, they judge you, but you're one step ahead of them because you're posting a video they weren't. So I went home literally from that event and started just shooting videos. And it's funny because I go back now and I'm like, oh my God, I posted that.
Yeah, she even did that on stage. She brought up, she's very well.
Yeah, Jen Gottlieb.
Gottlieb.
Yeah, Gottlieb.
Yeah.
How do you say her last name? Gottlieb.
But she went up and now you look at her videos and you're like, wow, she's amazing at this. And she showed her very first video and we're all like, oh, you started somewhere too.
Yeah. So about 2 years ago is when I started just posting videos of me walking through properties and just documenting, and I started showing what we were doing, and that brought so many, leads, people that want to,
the opportunities.
Yeah, opportunities, private money, people that just want to invest with you. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm realizing how important building a brand is. And everybody hears like how important, all the gurus out there, it's so important to build your brand. But looking back now, like how much money we have made just from building a brand on social media is just insane. And the relationships that we've built. I mean, people that, we would have never met that found us through social media just because they aligned with our goals, or, they think that we're authentic. Because that's one thing on my socials. I'm just completely raw. Like I'm going to post whatever it is. And I think building your brand, it's so important to be like your true authentic self. If I'm the same person, on Zoom, I'm the same person on social media as that you're going to shake my hand in person too. So, I mean, for people that are scared to post their first video, I just do it. Nobody thinks you look stupid. You're the only one that think that you look silly or stupid. So it's just building that brand is crucial.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of your videos, especially like the ones where I think it was Katie that walked into a house with a squatter in it.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my
that
God,
was
is
real.
that?
That wasn't
Yeah, I was
real.
like, oh my God. If
That's what
that
I
ever
find.
happens to me,
Normally she's like, she doesn't walk the properties, and I'm like, you got to walk this when you're already going to be out in that area. So she's like, is it going to be all right? And I'm like, it'll be fine.
And I literally said, promise me this is not one of those houses. And she's like, no, it's fine. I'm like, okay. And then I text her after. I said, I'm never walking a house ever again for you.
oh my gosh. Yeah, I was imagining what I would do in that situation if I had just walked into a house and then there was like a squatter in the closet. I was like, oh my God, I have no idea what I would do.
He's just like,
oh my God.
Things you see.
Oh my God, there's so many stories you can tell just by going on seller appointments and buy appointments. It's crazy.
I know. And I need to start. One thing I think is another goal was to start journaling, because there's just, once you get into the business that much, you just start to forget things. And it's like, journaling is, I think, a way to document too. I mean, yeah, you can document through videos, and
we'll tell people stories and they're like, what?
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, like it's like just so nonchalant, like
just another day in business.
Yeah, that just happened. And they're like,
yeah,
that's not normal. Like, that, right? And I'm like, it's not a big deal.
Are there any other stories you guys can share that maybe have not hit social media of like crazy seller encounters or buy appointments?
I think a story that we haven't shared this one on social yet. The mobile home one out in Callahan.
Oh, when I drove him to get his driver's license after I bailed him out of jail.
Yeah. That was one of our first. It was one of our first big deals. We were going to make 20 grand on it. And at that point, it was when, I don't think we were out of our jobs for 3 or 4 months at that point. And we're like, we will do anything to get this deal to close.
Probably things we should not have done that were not as safe that we would not do now. But
yeah, so I'll tell the story a little bit.
I had, I guess, just built rapport with him that he felt comfortable enough texting me at 4 a.m. one morning that he needed me to bail him out of jail. Something had happened with a motorcycle on Craigslist, but no, it wasn't his fault, but somehow he was arrested still. So I don't know. And so I had to figure out, I'd never bailed somebody out of jail before. And so I had to figure out the next day how you bail somebody out of jail, how I do not attach my name to it, because I knew well enough, don't do that. Worked with his mom and his girlfriend, bailed him out of jail. A whole bunch of, things happened in that day, but it finally happened. And then,
because the closing was supposed to happen
before. Yeah. This was very close to when closing was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so like the day before closing, he's like, oh, well, title said that I need a license. And I was like, yeah, you need a license. Like, you have to show them ID to close. He's like, well, they took it when I was in jail, and now I have to go get a new one.
Oh my God.
I'm like, okay. So I was out there anyways, because I was like walking it one last time or doing something out there. And so he's like, well, will you just drive me to DMV? And I'm like, okay, sure. So I text her. I'm like, well, I'm just driving him. Well, we had known a couple more of his background stories at that point. And she's like, what? No, you're not driving. Like, share your location right now. You should not be driving him. I'm like, well, we need to get this deal closed. Like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this deal closed. So take him to the DMV, get it. He had to go to the bank to do something too, because he didn't have a checking account or anything open. So he go open a checking account, drove him to the DMV, get his driver's license, had to pick up his cigarettes on the way home. And then we finally, there were some issues then also with the actual closing of it too. But I mean,
yeah, but the house was a mess too.
It was
we got the junk crew there.
They wouldn't go.
There were too many needles and spoons.
So they called from drugs.
Oh, wow.
So they called us and they were like, we can't. They were like, I safely can't, which I totally respected. He was like, I can't safely ask my guys to go ahead and do this. So he asked if we could pay him and his girlfriend and girlfriend's mom and all these people if we would pay just them to clean the house out. And so we're like, whatever. At this point, I don't care. Like, so we ended up paying the seller to clean his own house out, all his drug paraphernalia. And that's why I was out there, because I was checking to make sure that they were getting it cleaned out. And it delayed things a little bit. But I mean, closing on that, we look back and we're just like, okay, if we can figure out how all these obstacles, and like 2 people had died in the house, 1 person killed themselves, and then another person got shot by cops.
Yeah, there was just a lot. It was a lot.
It was there's something each day, something else came up about this house. But it was an interesting one.
But yeah, got it done for the seller, got it done for us. It was a win-win in the end.
Yeah.
that is pretty crazy. Well, it's a good thing that
it was
the buyer made money off of it too.
Yeah, because normally we don't ask them to clean their house out, but we had something in the contract for this one that the buyer wanted to clean out, obviously, with what was in it. So yeah.
Well, good thing he passed his driver's test the first time.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God. That is
lots of stories.
I didn't even know like what stuff was, and he was like, "Oh, don't touch that." And I'm like, "Why? What is that?" It's like all this drug stuff. And I was like,
yeah, I should start just like a side series just for like all the seller stories that I hear from people and like what I experienced, because I think those videos would go absolutely viral.
They would, for sure.
Oh my God. So I want to ask if you could give one piece of advice, maybe to your younger self when you first got started in the business, or maybe just to somebody that's first getting started, right? What would it be?
Mine would be to, honestly, just to have the laser focus, because it's going to pay off in the end. I know we already talked about, focus, and just laser focus is what I always, Bobby Castro, I remember going to Scale and Escape event, and he was like, laser focus. And I left that event and I was like, we don't have laser focus. I'm like, there's no way that we're ever going to succeed in this business if we don't have it. I mean, at some point, like, you have to be able to say, no to people that want to come visit you. You have to be able to say no to going to the concert or doing those things. And the sacrifice, just sacrificing and doing those things, you're going to see results. And I think there's just such a difference between people who succeed and don't succeed, is that one simple thing. And it sounds so simple, but one little distraction could be one deal that you're missing or one relationship that you're not forming. So I think in the beginning, just having that true intentional focus on what your goal is. So that would be my simple advice to people. Do you have any?
I think looking back, like on me personally, how I was when we started, obviously we balance each other out, but I was a lot more reserved than I am now. I think I have gotten better. I was just very nervous with every risk. I was so anxious. If one thing went wrong, I was like, oh my gosh, like our entire world, we're going to lose everything. Like, and I think just kind of one of our coaches actually, kind of helped put things in perspective with me. It's like, you have all these problems, that's a good thing. Or, you lost this, well, you learned this lesson. Well, how valuable is that lesson that you just learned versus what you lost? If it's more valuable, you still won. So just kind of putting that fear and anxiety that, some people have more of than other people, but putting that kind of aside, learning the lessons, understanding that it's not, somebody said this at our last event too, like, they said, like, we don't consider anything a failure. He was like, it's not a failure. Unless you died, it's not a failure. Like, it's just a hurdle. It's a learning experience. So kind of just putting that aside, reshifting how you're looking at things, and, you know, if something didn't go right, how you're looking at it and how you can just learn from it.
Right. Yeah, because we just dove, you know, we were those people that just dove in, like, other than listening to podcasts and stuff. You know, we weren't reading books, we weren't doing this, we just took action. And there was a lot of money lost. There was a lot of lessons learned in the long run, but, like, I mean, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
No. Right.
So getting over the fear and realizing that you have to take risks to see results.
I just grew up knowing risks were bad. Do not take risks. Risks were bad. Yeah. And I kind of had to reshift and kind of get that out of my mind. But no, I mean, it's so stupid, but, like, you know, the more risk you take, the more reward you could be. Like, you do hear that, but, like, you don't really think about it until you're in the moment. And if the risk is scarier for you than what the possible reward could be, you kind of just get stuck and trapped and don't want to make a move.
Right. I love that. I mean, just failing forward.
Yeah. Failing forward. That's it.
That's it. Any other last words for the podcast, guys?
I don't think. I appreciate you having us on.
Yeah. If anybody wants to learn more about us, you won't find me on socials, but she's on there.
Yeah, reach out on socials.
Reach out. We love to help people get their first deal or, you know, anything they need help with.
What's your guys's, if you guys want to share your guys' Instagram or Facebook, where can they find you on those?
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram, Gianina Ainsley Romito, and then my, what did I say? That was Facebook.
No, that's her Facebook.
Yeah, and then Instagram is just Gianina Romito _real estate. So
awesome.
Yeah,
I'll put that in the description of this podcast when it gets posted. That way they can reach out to you guys.
Yeah, my name's not the easiest to spell. So.
Love it. Well, guys, I really appreciate you guys having or coming on here. It was I think we had an amazing conversation. Guys, this is the Real Tales podcast. I will see you guys next time. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thanks
for
having us.